now is when I get everyone pissed off at me, which I'm ready for. I am ready for everyone to be angry at me. We are going to go through the top 5 overrated teams for 2018. So let me take you through my criteria first. So A, it's a team that is due for regression this year. What does regression mean? A team that was great last year, but due to multiple different factors, maybe a harder schedule or roster holes, something of the above, they're going to regress in 2018. B, a team who has more than reported roster holes. So maybe a team that you hear a lot of people hyping up that maybe just doesn't have a lot behind it for whatever reason, and people seem to think that they're going to be incredible this year. I'm going to poke a couple holes in that. C, a team with multiple overrated players. You'll pretty easily know what team I'm talking about there. And then D, a team whose division improved. Now, you might think that's a very specific criteria, but you have to remember, if you dominated your division and had, X amount of wins and that gave you 5 more wins on the season, and then all of a sudden your division got better, you're going to lose 2 to 3 wins, and that might kick you out of playoff contention. So beware of that as we go through these teams. All right, let's get to our number 1 overrated team for 2018. Oh, man. People in the AFC are going to be so mad at me. The Jacksonville Jaguars, the number 1 most overrated team for 2018. Why? Well, the last time I checked, Blake Bortles is still the starting quarterback. Now, the defense is going to be great again this year. There's no doubt in my mind that Jalen Ramsey and A.J. Boye and Calais Campbell, they're going to dominate. They're going to perform very well. The defense is again going to be one of the best units in the entire NFL. But that offense, to me, is not convincing at all. That passing attack should still be one of the worst in the entire NFL. So you combine a bad passing attack. I think the offensive line is still a big question mark besides bringing in Andrew Norwell. He's a good guard, but one guard does not make an entire offensive line. I think they still have issues at the tackle position. I think the other guard is also an issue. So, look, their wide receiver core as well is questionable. They signed Dante Moncrief to a ridiculous contract. They let Allen Robinson go. They have Austin Seferian-Jenkins at tight end now, but they don't have anyone behind him. I'm not convinced with the Jaguars quite yet. To me, they remind me of the Atlanta Falcons, who made it all the way to the Super Bowl and then had a massive regression year just because the team had a lot more roster holes in general, and that momentum that you can build as a team who isn't successful very often then has that huge year. For me, I think it's going to lead to a big-time regression for them. Also, the AFC South in general got better. If Andrew Luck comes back, Deshaun Watson's coming back, the Titans got better. The AFC South in general is going to be harder for the Jaguars to move through. And as well, they have a big-time matchup this year against both the Patriots and the Steelers and the Eagles and the Cowboys and the Giants. So they have a lot of tough games on the schedule this year, way, way harder than the last place schedule they played last year. So the Jaguars, my number 1 overrated team for 2018. All right, let's get to number 2. This is one I think that a lot of people can agree with me with. It's the Carolina Panthers. Now, they're good front 7. I think with Luke Kuechly coming back this year, we'll see what happens with Thomas Davis after his suspension is over. But I think that they lost a lot of players on the defensive side of the ball. They lost Kurt Coleman. Their secondary is an absolute mess right now. They've not been able to get anyone to replace Josh Norman over the past couple of years. They do not have a top-ranked corner that I think can shut down the likes of a Julio Jones or a Michael Thomas, or now obviously still talking about the NFC South, Mike Evans as well, Deshaun Jackson. I just don't think they have the guys in the secondary that can keep up with the rest of the NFC. So now for a big reason, it falls on the offense and especially that running game to work out the clock, to make sure that they can keep the ball out of the opposing team's hands. But look, that running back core to me is still very questionable. Who's running the ball between the tackles? You have Christian McCaffrey, you have C.J. Anderson. I'm not a huge fan of either of them in terms of running the ball. I think that they're electric out of the backfield on screen passes and running the ball on the outside, but I just think that with the way the NFC is kind of in trending over the past couple of years, you got to be able to run the ball between the tackles and get those tough yards. And I just wonder if the Panthers have the personnel on offense to be able to do that. They lost Andrew Norwell, so I think the interior of that offensive line is questionable as well. Matt Khalil is still somehow the left tackle, which I don't even know why they gave him that contract in the first place. It'll be interesting to see what happens with the Panthers this year, but 11 wins just does not seem likely for the Panthers in 2018. All right, let's get to number 3, and I've been banging this drum since the day the season ended, and people have been telling me that this is a comeback year for them. The Green Bay Packers are without question one of the most overrated teams in all of football going into 2018. Oh, but Harris, they got Jimmy Graham, and Aaron Rodgers is coming back from injury. The offense was never the problem in the first place. The problem was that their defense is still a complete and utter disaster. This was one of the worst pass rushes in all of football last year. Unequivocally one of the worst pass rushes in the NFL. Guess what the Packers didn't do this offseason? They didn't add pass rush, and it got so bad that Clay Matthews, during his first interview at OTAs, commented on how strange it was that the Packers didn't add pass rush this offseason. Now, I also look at the secondary. I like Jair Alexander, who they drafted. I like Josh Jackson as well. But I have a question. Who's covering Adam Thielen? Who's covering Allen Robinson, now in the Chicago Bears? Who's covering Golden Tate? Who is the number 1 corner on this team? Kevin King? We saw him get roasted multiple times last year. I think this Packers defense is going to get them killed this year. The Bears upgraded on offense. The Vikings added Kirk Cousins. Like I said, the Bears, the Lions are coming back with a good offense this year and a better running game. I think the Packers are going to be a great offense this year. I'm excited to see what Aaron Rodgers does with Jimmy Graham and now with Mercedes Lewis, but I am not at all confident in that defense. I think it is going to be the death of them. I don't even think the Packers end up making the playoffs this year. I think the NFC is stacked, and I think it's difficult to actually put them in the top 6. You can make an argument that they're not even the second best team in their division. And if you look at the conference in general, we could have 2 teams from the NFC South go. There are 3 possible playoff teams in the NFC West. There's 3 possible playoff teams in the NFC East as well. Where do the Packers fit in? I think they have a much more difficult path to get to the playoffs than people think, even with Aaron Rodgers. I think quarterback is the most important position in football, but the NFC is stacked with great offenses this year, and the Packers, I just don't think, have the defense to keep up. All right, let's continue to move on here with my overrated teams. Let's go to number 4, and it's the Houston Texans. Now, I was looking through Super Bowl odds the other day, and it kind of stunned me when I was looking through them, and that's also based off of what some of these overall rankings are based off of. And I was stunned to see that the Houston Texans, a team that went 4-12 last year, who have a quarterback coming off of a torn ACL last year, a team that doesn't have an offensive line, a team that has a shaky secondary and has multiple star players coming back from injury, 18-1 Super Bowl odds this year. The Houston Texans, who went 4-12 last year. I have no idea why people think that this team is going to be so good. I like Deshaun Watson. I think he's a fun quarterback, but he's also coming off another ACL tear. This isn't the first ACL tear of his career. He's had 3 in his football career. 3 ACL tears. That linebacker core is a huge issue. Brian Cushing is gone, though he's obviously not a factor anymore, seeing as the dude can't stop taking steroids. The offensive line is still a huge issue. I think the secondary is very shaky. I don't really see the appeal of this Texans team. I don't like their running game. I think Lamar Miller is 3.5 yards in a cloud of dust. D'Onta Foreman, I don't know if he has the chops to be an NFL running back. This is a classic overhyped football team because of the quarterback. Deshaun Watson had some fun games last year. Fun games. Totally can admit that. But that doesn't all of a sudden mean they're going to come into this year and be a playoff team. They're in a tough division, and they got to be able to find a way to not just can't give up so many yards through the air. So the Texans, number 4 on my list for overrated teams. I would be stunned if they go 500 this year. They're in a really, really tough division with a very, very just top-heavy roster. All right, let's go to my last overrated team. And this one, I think people can kind of, how do I put this? I think they can agree with me because this team is going through a big-time transition in terms of one quarterback to another. The defense is going from a big transition from one generation of defensive players to the next generation of defensive players. And yet somehow the Kansas City Chiefs are also 18-1 to win the Super Bowl next year, the same as the Houston Texans. Now, I like Patrick Mahomes. I think Patrick Mahomes is going to be a monster at quarterback in the NFL. But we can't really deny that the Chiefs are losing a veteran quarterback in Alex Smith, and there's not just going to be that there's going to be a natural kind of downtick from Alex Smith to a rookie quarterback. Like, there has to be. Alex Smith had a great year last year, despite all of my opinions against him. He had a great year last year. You're switching to a rookie quarterback. They trade Marcus Peters. The rest of the secondary is weak. They got rid of Derek Johnson, so the linebacker core has some questions. And I think it's also fair to ask a question about Kareem Hunt. He had a really bad end of the year last year. He hit a massive wall. Now we go into his sophomore year. Could we see a sophomore slump for Kareem Hunt? I think it's likely that we see him take a little bit of a downtick statistically from last year, especially with a new passing attack. I think they overpaid massively for Sammy Watkins, but Sammy Watkins plus Tyreek Hill is going to be a lot of fun. But the Chiefs are one of my top overrated teams for 2018. Let's take you through that top 5 one more time before we get to our next segment. At number 1, we got the Jacksonville Jaguars. Number 2, it's the Carolina Panthers. Number 3, the Green Bay Packers. Number 4, the Houston Texans. And number 5, it's the Kansas City Chiefs.